Honestly, everything you learn in the classrooms, maybe not in a direct way, you can take back with you to your real life, right? But like your ability, like the critical thinking that you develop from like writing papers about everything and having to come up with theses and having to come up with ways to support your ideas transfers directly into how you just navigate the world, man. Because like then you start doing that in your day-to-day life, right? And then like for me, and I started to make better decisions in like the prison space, right? I'm gonna do this and do that because like now I got these tools and it allowed me to think further ahead into a decision. And I saw things now that before I didn't see. I didn't have the ability to see maybe 3 or 4 steps ahead. Where now, because I've been training my mind to sort of like look at all these different things, I was able to like be presented with something, like a decision, or be presented with something, a proposition, and maybe like, nah, I'm good. You know what I mean? It's might it sounds now that I say it's super simple, but the critical thinking of the tool, it just goes a long way.
Watch out, the clock may tick and your life's over. Choosing to be happy takes weight off your shoulder.
Welcome back to the After School Podcast, where we speak our thoughts and tell our truth. My name is Ajani, and
I'm Byron, and today we're here with Giovanni Hernandez, who was a graduate of Board College and got his education through the Board College of Prison Initiative. He has 5 years of experience helping incarcerated people get their education through the prison system.
So Giovanni, what's your story? Like, what brings you here with us today?
Like how did I get here? Just like sitting in this chair, sort of being on this podcast.
Yeah.
Theo. Honestly, so I met Theo through Theo's partner. Me and Theo's partner are really close friends. And this is gonna sound funny. We and Theo just kind of just got to talking one day at the bar. Just like, hey, what do you do? Started talking about our backgrounds, and so that I have a history in nonprofit. I was like, super just blown away by that. I didn't know that he had like founded this and has been doing this work for so long. I thought it was amazing, and we got to just talking and sort of telling our stories. And he was like, hey man, I would love to have you on my podcast. I think your story is super dope. And you could you have like something to contribute to the conversation. And I was like, yeah man, just let me know when. He told me today. We made it happen. But I was just super excited at the opportunity. I can't remember last time I'd been on the podcast, to be fair. But yeah, that's sort of what brought me here, was just like a conversation at the bar, just like, sort of just like building about real stuff.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I just wanted to ask you, like, what obstacles did you face, getting your education of literature while being incarcerated?
Sort of to highlight one of the most amazing things about the Bar Prison Initiative is the fact that when you're in that program, you are a student. Every professor, every staff member treats you as a student. They don't look at your status as an incarcerated person to be a part of your identity, right? And what was great about that is that it allowed me to sort of really believe that I was a student, sort of think of myself as a student, and adopt that identity in a very real way. The challenges are that you are incarcerated, and so there are some staff, in the facility who don't agree that people who are incarcerated who've made mistakes deserve that, the access to higher education when maybe they themselves didn't have it, or they're struggling to pay for like their children's education. And those are valid points, but the reality is that like these are the programs that really make a difference in people's lives, and it's, you know, more than just like my life. I've been able to make a difference in like my family's lives. I'm a parent, so like my children's lives, and you know, just like dealing with people who weren't happy, people who had sort of power over you, but who weren't happy that you were fortunate to have this opportunity to sort of, you know, pursue higher education while incarcerated. In addition to that, we had no internet, right? We had no Google. Everything was like you had to read the book. You had to put in like a research request. Sometimes the facility would deny some things that you are looking into for this or that reason. You know, prison is the place that makes life difficult. And just because you are sort of, you know, doing something that is good, and, you know, most people would agree that, you know, you're trying to better yourself, it doesn't stop making life difficult for you. At times, it actually, there are times when, like, trying to make those changes, trying to pursue these opportunities actually puts a target on your back, unfortunately. You know?
Okay. We had like a bio of you, and it said that you owned a nonprofit.
No, so I don't own a nonprofit. I was a founding member of a tech nonprofit. It's funny, I started as a participant when it was just like a startup, just like an idea. This woman, Alex Chen, amazing software engineer, just like, hey, I want to be able to provide this education to people who don't have access to it, anyone who's been like involved in the criminal justice system for free. And so I'd heard about the program. I applied, I became a participant. And over that time, she had volunteers from her like contacts in the industry who would come and teach us I think it was 2 or 3 times a week, how to, you know, build our own websites from scratch, right? Based on ideas. And sort of like, it was also sort of fine-tuned where if like you're more interested in apps, so like you'd have like the joint session where we'd all kind of learn the same thing, and then you'd have an individual session where you pursue what you were more primarily interested in. From like that first group, I was a member of the first group. She asked me to come on and help her, and my other colleague, Army Armstead. So we came on. We were the first. It was just her, me, and him, and we built it out. You know, we got some more funding for it. We got more participants. We were able to like make partnerships with like Columbia University's UXR program and other organizations. And so like, yeah, I don't own a nonprofit. The nonprofit continues to run. I was just a founding member. I helped start it up. I helped get it running. And then I moved on. And I went into where did I go after that? I think I went back into a different nonprofit, but more into like the criminal justice space, doing policy reform.
All right. And what motivated you to want to start helping people who are incarcerated get their education?
Just my experience with myself, my experience sort of seeing other people, my friends, people I didn't even really know like that, sort of grow and develop from just like taking a few classes, just one semester. You can see the change in how someone not just, you know, communicates, not just moves through space, but sort of like thinks. You can tell when someone's thinking about how they're responding to something, right? There's like, you can see a sense of not just of control and an intent to like, not just say the first thing that comes out their mouth, and also think about how do I want to communicate this to this person, or, you know, the professor or whatever. So, you know, for me, after my first semester, I had this moment of realization that like I was no longer thinking the same way that I used to think prior to like starting my classes, right? I was sort of doing this like very, what they call critical thinking in the background now almost all the time. And I would question things. I would just, simple things. I'd read an article in a magazine and wonder like why the author decided to phrase it this way instead of this other way, right? Things that I didn't do before were becoming habit, not necessarily habit, it was just like instinct. Like I would just read something and ask questions that before weren't, you know, that just wasn't the case. I was just a much more passive reader. You know what I mean?
You gained like a sense of curiosity in a way?
Yeah, a sense of curiosity, a sense of like just I felt like I understood things more. I had the confidence to, you know, I had the confidence that like I actually had ideas, that I had opinions, that I could formulate opinions about things that were valid, right, that had value.
Yeah.
And these aren't things or ideas necessarily I had about myself prior to having this experience, prior to like going to college.
When you were in the board college, what courses did you take while being there?
So Bard is a liberal arts school. So I took, everything you could think of. I did art history. I did drawing. I did 2 semesters of Mandarin Chinese. I social science, poetry, 20th century literature. It run the gamut. They had a documentary course at one point where you just studied the history of the documentary. It's also a place where if there's they allowed you to sort of go through the course book of what they offered on the actual campus. And if you saw a class that you thought was interesting, that you sort of thought could be viable, because like not every class is viable in a prison space. But like you can't have chemistry because you can't have labs. Right, you can't deal with chemicals and stuff, and you can't do biology in terms of because you can't do certain things you just can't do or pursue in prisons because of the security aspect of it. But go sort of to my point was that they allowed you the flexibility of sort of looking for a course, so you're like, oh man, this is really in line with like what I'm really interested in, and if you found enough people who were sort of who you could basically just make a petition, go around, have all the people who were interested in the course as well to sign up, and then take that to the staff and feel like, hey, we're requesting you guys consider bringing this class in. This is how many people are committing to taking the course if you bring it. And in that way, we were able to sort of ourselves sort of affect the curriculum and pursue our own particular interests, right? Sort of get a little bit more detailed into whatever those ideas or those topics or that course would be.
Okay. And how did you find out that you can get an education like through while you were being incarcerated? Like, would they like tell you, hey, you want to get an education?
No, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. So, it is a very sort of long. I can keep it short, but it is a story, where. Again, I was just telling Theo earlier, like, yo, man, I've just been lucky, man. There have just been times where just like I've been blessed to be at the right place at the right time, even in bad circumstances, right? Like I've been very lucky and blessed in my life. And the year I got transferred to the facility where the first facility that like I was at where they offered higher education, I didn't even know they had college there, but until I got there.
Yeah.
College and prison was not really or hadn't been a thing for almost 20 years since they gutted the funding program for it in the 90s in New York. And so there were very few college and prison programs at the time. They were very spread out, and I was just happy to be closer to home, honestly, right? Like I'd been like 6-7 hours away from home for a couple years. And I was just like, man, now I'm an hour and a half. Like, this is dope. Like, my family's not going to have to, like, struggle to come see me and spend, like, all these hours on the bus or driving up all these hours and back. I was just, like, excited that, like, I was somehow making life easier.
Relieved.
Yeah. And then so I got there, and I come to learn that there's a college and prison program, and, peep this, like, I wasn't interested in applying. I didn't even want to go to college at the time. I don't know. I'd struggled. At the time, I'd been in prison for about 6 years. And it was a very rough 6 years. I'd struggled to sort of figure out how to do time. I was young when I first went up, upstate to New York, and there was a lot I needed to learn. And I was a very angry young person at the time for a lot of different reasons. And so I got into a lot of trouble in the beginning, and kind of around the time where just before I got transferred, I'd reached this point where, like, I wasn't getting into any trouble anymore. I knew how to navigate, like, the spaces. I knew how to get around certain things. Like, I knew how to, do time comfortably, right? Without, like, sort of making too many, making too many waves or drawing too much attention. Yeah. And as crazy as it sounds to me now, I didn't want to go to college because I was like, that will create a change to my routine, and that will put me in contact with more officers and staff and people. And like, for me in my head, I was like, that means more opportunities to get in trouble.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like,
Yeah.
I had a routine. I was cool with just like how things were going, and I was like navigating. And I'm like, I'm trying to go home. I'm not trying to like continue to get in trouble and like delay my release. A friend of mine actually sat me down and was like, listen, you're young. He was in school himself actually, and he was like, you're young, you need to apply to this. And I was like, I'm good, man. Like, I ain't trying to apply to that. I'm just like, I got my little job, no show job I don't go to, so I don't have to worry about nothing. I come out to the yard, I work out, we play ball a little bit, I go back, I take a nap. Like, I had life all planned out, I mean, like 2021. And he's like, nah. He's like, yo, I'm serious. Like, you're not leaving this bench until you like fill this out. Like, you need to apply. I don't care if you don't get in, you need to apply. It's like, fuck, with the curse. I was like, whatever. And so I filled out the application. When, the exam part of it came, did the exam. I ended up getting a letter a couple weeks later, getting to be selected for an interview process after the exam. And in my head, like, my interview went horribly. In my mind, in my recollection, I was like, oh, I blew that. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. Why would I say that? Why would I answer this question like that? I was just like so hard on myself. And I got in.
Okay.
Like, it's still an awe for me that I'm like, I was super unprepared for it, in my head. Like, for just the exam, I hadn't been to school in years at the time. And like, I got in. And that just like that little decision, that little moment to like fill out that application, to like, go through with it, really changed my life because it gave me tools that I was just missing.
Gotcha.
Wait. Let's go back to when you were talking about your routine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, being a part of the Bard College, was there anything that changed you to switch up your routine and add something into your life that you probably still do like today?
That's a good question. I mean, you know what? Yeah. You know what? The one thing, it's so funny because I was really thinking about like, what do I continue to do now in my everyday life? That's like a thing I got from like that experience. Research. Like, we'll have a conversation. We're having a conversation now, right? So you might say something that I'm like, curious about that. When we're done, I'm gonna go Google that over in the corner, man, and just like, I want to know. Like, I have that like that drive to sort of, when I have an idea that sort of piques my interest, like, I want to know at least a little bit more about it. So like, enough so if like someone asked me like, what is that? I could explain it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's something I got from inside, where I was like, I got really driven to pursue things that interested me, ideas, topics, concepts, everything. And I continue to do that now. I continue to just like research things that either stump me or interest me.
Also, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like it's kind of cool that you guys learned about Mandarin.
Oh man, that was hard. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was just like barely getting by. I was, a B at best both semesters, and then I was tapped out. I was like, I'm not doing this again, because it's super hard. I think, again, it's about also not having access to the proper resources. So like, they would come. We had like a computer lab kind of deal, and they would come and they would upload helpful material. Copies of like, news from China, right, in Mandarin, like, so you can hear it, so you can try it, but it's not the same, I feel like, because you can't take these things back to your cell, right?
Yeah.
You have like a very limited time in order to like use these tools, and then when you go back, it's just you, your Mandarin book, your English Chinese dictionary, right, and your characters, and you're just like trying to figure that out. But yeah, no, it was super dope. I love that I had that opportunity. But I also love that I realized I just wasn't good at it, and I moved on.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about the nonprofits you worked at and like how they provide, how they help people get their education. Like, what do they provide?
Well, no, not every nonprofit I've worked for has been sort of in that space. Again, we're worked for the tech nonprofit, which focus on providing people with like free tech education, right? Whatever it was you wanted to learn,
Yeah.
App development, software, data science, like, you know, there was the volunteer there to help you, so sort of work with you one-on-one, and you guys come up with your own curriculum. And you work that out on your own timing, right? Like you guys will meet virtually or in person, however you guys figure it out.
Yeah.
A couple times a week, if it's one, because you're busy. Maybe it's one time a week, maybe it's more if you're not that busy. But it was all really in your control, right? Like you figured out what worked best for you, and your mentor would be there to sort of say like, all right, then this is what we can do with the time that you have and like the access that you have to certain things. And I'm here to guide you and also provide you with the resources that I can.
Right.
Other nonprofits I worked for, I worked at a bail fund for 2 years, right? And I'm not sure if you're familiar with a bail fund but you know, they were these nonprofits that would bail people out who didn't have the money to bail themselves out, right? Like it was mostly like, you know, misdemeanors,
Yeah.
you know, homeless people who got arrested for trespassing because they were trying to like be sleeping, you know, in a hallway or something, and then like someone called the police. We would bail a bunch, you know, once like things got really bad, we started also bailing out migrants, people who were like in immigration detention, and that was really dope work. In particular, I was a sort of like a case manager. Right, I worked with our clients once we got them out, and we'd have a meeting, we'd sit down, and we'd do an interview, and I would figure out what they needed.
Yeah.
You know, like what are the things that sort of led you to come into contact with the justice system? What, like, all right, you're homeless, so you need housing, right? You need a stable place to get. Okay, these are the steps we sort of have to go through to get you there, right? These are the organizations that we have contacts with, that we have relationships with, that we can refer you to, right? Another dope thing that we did was we had just like money on the side that we could spend for our clients who maybe like needed groceries like right then and there, or like it was wintertime and we just bailed you out, you don't have a coat, so we'd like take you down the block to like the store and get you a coat. There were a number of different things. Sometimes we'd just give you, you know, sometimes we'd be able to give you the money. It just had to make sense for us in terms of like, you know, what you needed it for, or, you know, what can we get you, like how can we help you, right?
So like would they make sure that with the people they bail out, would they make sure that they wouldn't go and do those same actions again?
No, it wasn't a thing where we weren't like probation. It was more a thing of like, listen, everyone deserves the same opportunity, you know, or the same access to that bail system, right? It's there for a reason. If you have the ability to pay this, then you can go, you know, you can fight your case from outside.
Right.
But everyone doesn't have access to the same money, right? Everyone isn't economically, you know, stable, just doesn't have the funds. And so like, as a poor person, you're just in a tight spot if you do get arrested, because one, you know, you're probably not gonna be able to afford the bill, and if you are, then you have to like maybe one of your family members have to put up a house. You know, they have to get into contact with the I forget what you call these people. However, you know, and also statistically, you're more likely to get found guilty if you're fighting your case from inside than if you are from outside. There's just like a bunch of little like subtle ways in which like whether you're outside or inside makes a big difference on the outcome of your case. You know, and just because you don't have the money doesn't mean you shouldn't have the same opportunity or the same access to like, you know, that what do you call that? The presumption of innocence.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
I just want to ask, back when you were incarcerated, I don't know if you had any hobbies or anything you did before you went to Bard College, or even now. Like, do you have any hobbies? Interesting hobbies, anything.
My hobbies change. I don't know. I'm someone who like, I'll do something for a bit, I have a moment with it, and then like maybe something else will pick my interest, or like I'll have overlapping. It feels like I just can never do one thing.
I feel that.
What would I do? I mean, I feel my hobby before going to prison was like I was a bit of an artist. Like I would draw. I was just like getting into painting. I didn't really paint too much in prison. I draw a little bit, from my own sanity and just for fun. Until I got into school, and then you ain't have no time for anything but school, to be fair. Like, it's a very rigorous curriculum. I think it's also part of, like, it's like it's a challenge, right? And like, to be fair, one thing that can be said about people who are incarcerated is like, they're driven sometimes by challenge, right? For whatever reason, right? But it's just like, oh, you can't beat me in ball. What are you talking about? Come on, we going right now to the court, right? Like, that energy.
They got something to prove.
But it was that energy sort of focused in the academic space.
Yeah.
Where it was like, what, you think I can't get an A in this class? You well, I bet you can't get an A in this class. Like, we would have those sort of conversations and those sort of like interactions where the same competitiveness, but in the academics, it was like, in class, it's like saying like, yo, I bet you, 3 honey buns, I'm gonna do better on this test than you.
3 honey buns.
Oh man. It's interesting to just think about now that, like, for some reason, most people went to public school, who went to prison, or who go to prison, and like, for some reason, our public schools so sort of kindle that same fire, so or nurture that same competitiveness in the academic space that we had while we were incarcerated, right? Like. Yeah. I felt like I was trying to like run away from class, right? When I was young and in school, and when I was older and having this experience, I felt like I was running to class because it just felt so liberating.
Right. How did your major in literature like affect how you see the world, and how does it affect your work today?
Perspective is everything, man. With literature, you read a book and you're like, all right, this is a story. But then like there are stories within that story, right? Yeah. Every character has its own story, their own story. There are different perspectives for how to read certain interactions. Like, it's life on the paper, right? And right. Life is complex. Life has different ways to see it, and like it was basically, for me, literature helped me grow my imagination of like what different things could be possible, right? And like also just like holding off on judgment and being like, all right, this person did this, but why? What would cause this person to do this, rather than to going for the obvious and be like, oh, because he's a dick, like that's why he did that shit, right? Like, so sort of studying literature and sort of looking for more deeply into the text, right? And for what was either apparently, obviously, or not apparently there, right? Like, some things are really deeply hidden, but like there are interpretations in literature that you can draw out that make complete sense if you can provide the evidence. And that sort of opened the world to me, that that opened the world of like thinking more complexly about just everything, right? Sort of taking everything, not either with a grain of salt or just like taking a step back, those times when I'm like, this could be more than just like what it seems. Right. And what are those things, right? What are the things that, aren't necessarily on the surface that I can like draw out from what I know.
What are like some of those books that help you realize that? If you remember.
Oh man, the first one they made us read, the first story they made us read was Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis. I don't know if you
remember that by heart.
Because it was the first story, right? Like, I don't know if y'all know it, right? This dude basically turns into a cockroach. No explanation, just turns into a cockroach, and then the entire story is him sort of like having this like existential crisis about being a cockroach and like all the other stuff that's going crazy, like just going wrong in his life. And they're like, read this story and then like tell us about it.
Like give you a summary about the book?
No, they challenged us to sort of, create our own opinions about it, right? And it was the first time. The reason why I know that is because it was the first time an educator had asked me, right, what I thought about the stuff we were studying, right? And it was the first time, or it was like the start of the journey to realizing that I have opinions that have value too, right? That like, there are people who've done great things and have come up with great ideas, but we're constantly growing, we're constantly evolving. Ideas are constantly being disproven or just being, sort of developed even deeper or more. And everyone is capable of that. I feel like my education prior to that never really fostered the idea that like I could have my own ideas, right? It was more so like, can you memorize the ideas of everybody else who matters, right? These people, these historical figures and whatnot.
Right.
But it was the first time that like they cared about what I thought.
And that's what like changed that perspective.
Yeah, man. Well, at least it was the beginning of like, it took time sort of to really get to the point where I was like, oh, like I'm smart. Like I have ideas and I have like evidence to back my ideas, and this makes perfect sense. And like, at first I thought I was being a little crazy, but like, no, this actually does make perfect sense on paper the way it did in my head, right? Like it was a journey to get to the point where, again, I learned that like my opinions, my ideas have value. Not to say that it took work and it takes work, right? Like if I really want something to, if I want to imbue something with my value, then I really dig deep. I really do my research. I really try to put forth the best effort that I can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The environment in the classroom or the board college, you talked about it. How do you think? Let me scratch that. Wait, did you still have any like bonds from the people you were in class with?
Absolutely.
I played basketball with too.
All my best friends are people who I was incarcerated with.
Hey.
Every single one of my close friends right now are people. One of my best friends I met when I was 17 on Rikers Island. I've known him for going on like 19 years, almost 20 years. I've known him. You know what I mean? This is one of my best friends, and we met while we were incarcerated. Those are people I've known for 10, 15 less years, but like, that opportunity, that experience sort of also helps you build bonds with people. It's a struggle. It's the same way if you go to college, right? And like you're gonna make lifetime friends when you go to college, right? Because it's a very unique experience. Even in prison, it's its own thing, but like it's something that not everyone else is going through, right? And so there is this like camaraderie, this brotherhood, this almost like fraternity type of thing where it's like we look out for each other, we help each other when we're struggling, and that has transferred to the outside. If I need help, they're there. If they need help, I'm there. And it's just amazing to just develop bonds with people. Y'all young, so y'all know the older you get, the harder it is to make friends, to be fair. I've just like that opportunity gave me some brothers that like I've probably really helped me sort of make it through life in different ways, and helped me through like some tough times.
What is your like ultimate goal with while working within these nonprofit like organizations?
Well, I want to start my own nonprofit.
That's cool.
Probably more than one nonprofit. There are so many different things to address, right? You could be one nonprofit that does a lot of things pretty good, or you could be one nonprofit that does one thing super well, right? Like, but yeah, I want, through what I've learned, I've had so many different experiences. I want to take everything I've learned and use it for, something that matters. And for me, like, I know how to get government funding because of my background working in lobbying, right? So now I know how to access that. I have relationships in government that I could lean on to try to get, startup funding for a nonprofit. I also have, knowledge that, in terms of like how the political structures work. So, to sort of get to the point, like the nonprofit that I've been sort of developing in my head and what I want to put forth in the year 2025 at least, beginning, is a civic education and civic engagement nonprofit, right? I want to provide education, workshops, resource materials, do classes in community colleges, high schools, community centers, and projects, like wherever I can get people to come and learn about this stuff, to feel empowered, to feel like they know how things work, and then how to work it, right? Because like once you understand how the system works, then you understand how to work the system, which is sort of where we get sort of left off, because there are so many people that know how the system works and then work it, and we're like, oh man, the system doesn't work for us because X, Y, and Z, but like everyone else is sort of like doing good. The reality is that like, we as a community, people, disenfranchised communities, just for a lot of reasons, have not had access to the information that they need to like even just make small changes in their own communities, right? Just like set up meetings with your local council member, or assembly member or senator, which is like super easy. You literally just like pick up the phone, you call the office, you ask to speak to the scheduler, and then you figure out a date and time that works. And then you're like, you know what, we could do this by Zoom, or like it's like literally just like requesting it. And there are a lot of people who don't even know you can do that. That it's well within your right as a resident of the district or the area, as a citizen, to say, call your local elected official's office and request a meeting to talk to him about whatever. Your landlord has not been giving you heat for 6 months. The sidewalk in front of your house or like down the block has been messed up forever, and people keep getting hurt. There are things that like, unfortunately, those little small things that affect like your day-to-day life and then your neighbor's day-to-day life don't always make it to their ears, don't always make it to their attention, and so things get overlooked. But everyone has the power, and in some cases, I might even say the responsibility, right? To when something's not right, call them up and be like, hey, whether you voted for them or not, they work for you. Hey, can we meet? Or hey, who do I talk to about addressing this? They have people that work for them whose job is to help you sort of navigate the political system, to get the results that you need, right? And even just like I said, like in my experience, something as simple as that can have huge impact, right? Can like make changes for people. They just don't know and don't have the confidence, right? The more you know, the more confident you oftentimes feel. So I want to provide that confidence to people. I want to provide that information to people, young and old. I want people to understand how to work the system, or how to make the system work for them.
Right.
What advice would you give to somebody that looked at college or the board college the same way you did when you first thought about like applying to it?
It's it's really hard to sort of, cause not hard. I don't think that's the right word. It's complicated, right?
Yeah.
Because I was the person who didn't want to take advantage of their experience because I was afraid. Yeah. And then once I got in, I was like, oh my God, like this is like amazing. This is there's something here. And I went on to tell other people, like, you need to apply. You should definitely apply. Like, I became one of the advocates for the program myself. But when someone sits there and asks you, like, why? Why should I do? Put myself, like, I see you guys always look stressed out, running around with books here and there. Like, this guy's hair went white. This guy lost his hair. Like, why should I put myself through that? And you don't have necessarily the words to tell them, right, or to like describe the experience, the transformation that occurs when you're struggling through these things, when you're like sitting there at 2-3 a.m. in your cell, busting your head, trying to finish this paper, trying to make it strong, trying to make sure you put forth your best effort, right? And like that's where you grow,
right?
And like, yeah, I could have said, say that to them, but it still doesn't capture what happens, man. You just like one day realize you're different. Yeah, you don't always actually realize it's happening. One day you just like, I feel different. I feel empowered. I feel more confident about how to navigate, because like honestly, everything you learn in the classrooms, maybe not in a direct way, you can take back with you to your real life, right? But like, your ability, like the critical thinking that you develop from like writing papers about everything and having to come up with theses and having to come up with ways to support your ideas, transfers directly into how you just navigate the world, man. Because like then you start doing that in your day-to-day life, right? And then like for me, and I started to make better decisions in like the prison space, right? I'm gonna do this and do that because like now I got these tools and it allowed me to think further ahead into a decision. And I saw things now that before I didn't see. I didn't have the ability to see maybe 3 or 4 steps ahead. Where now, because I've been training my mind to sort of like look at all these different things, I was able to like, be presented with something, like a decision, or be presented with, something, a proposition, and me be like, nah, I'm good. You know what I mean? It sounds, now that I say it's super simple, but the critical thinking of the tool, just goes a long way. No matter how far in rock bottom you feel like you are, or like, just like being able to think for yourself is a liberating experience, because it allows you to take off the shackles of like the identity you may be holding on to from your past, ideas that aren't necessarily always yours, that you sort of inherited from either your parents, your friends, people in your neighborhood, right? TV, social media. You start like to, again, form your own opinions, really question things that you're like, yeah, do I really believe this, or do I believe this because someone told me it was true?
Right.
And once I started, I never stopped. I just keep trying to like figure out what it is, what do I think versus, what do I think because that's what someone else told me to think.
Ooh, that's a good message.
Yeah.
That's a good message.
And what would you tell people who want to start a nonprofit? Like, what advice would you give them to get them started?
Speak to Theo. Listen, how much either, but no, honestly, again, I'm a researcher. I read up on articles. I use whatever resources you have available, right? I Google stuff so I know ahead of time what I'm walking into. I have friends that have started their own nonprofits, and so I'll hit them up and be like, hey, you have a couple minutes, you want to meet, can we meet up for coffee, or you want to meet up over lunch, or if like you just want to go on a Zoom, I want to talk to you about your, how you did it, what are tips that you can give me that you learn from your experience, right? Like it's always, it's good to learn on your own, but like it's even better to learn from someone else's mistakes.
Yeah.
And so just like use whatever resources you have available. Again, Theo's a resource because he has that experience and he can sort of walk you through the challenges that he, came across that maybe he didn't foresee, and that'll give you a better roadmap of like how you want to go about certain things. But the internet, people, are honestly just like the two things you really just need to then figure out like how how you want to go about it.
Okay.
How would you describe the environment of the college in 3 words?
Describe the environment.
Yeah.
Rigorous, transformative, and community.
Oh. What does rigorous mean?
Rigorous.
Rigorous.
It means like tough, like hard. It's no. I think it's not actual or accurate description. It's more like it's not. It's more tantamount to like not easy. It's like a difficult workout would be rigorous, right? Like it would take a lot out of you. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be easy to complete, but it's possible.
Right.
You kind of made me want to go to college.
You didn't want already? You want to go to college, bro?
No, I want to go to college, but you kind of made me want to go to that college.
Oh.
Like you make us want to experience college like even more.
I mean, listen, why not? The campus is beautiful. Like the actual campus is beautiful. The people are great. They do so much great work. And not just to say, wait, When you said that college, you ain't mean the prison one, right?
I'm joking. I'm
Nah.
joking. I'm
no,
joking.
I just thought about that. 'Cause I was like, wait, nah. No, but the actual campus is beautiful. It's like it's in upstate New York, and it's it overlooks like a bluff where they have the river. It's like they have so much property. It's really great.
Wait, did you say that you had to pay tuition to go?
When you're incarcerated,
Yeah.
no. So the program at the time, especially, was all privately funded. Grants, foundations, very rich people. Who believed in the work, who believed that, in providing that opportunity and believed in how transformative that opportunity could be for people who have been written off. So everything was free.
Oh,
No one, you didn't have to pay for anything. Yeah, man, I tell you, it's a blessing and an opportunity, and something that no matter what you do, what situations you find yourself in, you should not ever be restricted from having access to, because it's we already know it's one of the things. It's why why is school so important for society? Why do they make you go, right? Prescriptively for 12 plus years. It's because that's how you grow, right? You're not necessarily like by memorizing like 1492 and this and that, but in the struggle, right? And like learning, applying what you learn to real life, figuring out what works, what doesn't, like really developing and sharpening your tools.
Right. And going back to the beginning, how would you deal with those people that didn't agree with that you didn't have to like pay for college while other people did? Like, how would you like stay away from that negativity?
Wait, also, I want to add to that. Like, I don't know. Theo came over and said, are they, I'm not going to quote Theo on this, but are they like fighting to cut those funds for the program? Or if you don't know?
No. Well, I'll answer yours first, and then I'll get to
Okay.
yours. And a lot of it is you're so busy trying to get your work done that you don't have as much time to like not be in the school building or in your cell studying, right?
Yeah.
Like you can go to the yard, but you're not as often as you used to, because if you're not in class, then you're like working on a paper for a class, studying for an exam, or like meeting up with other people in your class to like figure something out, right? Like doing a group study session or something like that. But the reality is like you're going to come across people, right? Whether they're staff, particularly staff who don't agree with the opportunity you have and feel however they feel, and have again like the ability to make your life difficult or not difficult. I believe that they have valid opinions, right? Like I understand that. Like I understand being upset for someone who made a mistake that you didn't necessarily make, having an opportunity that you don't have, or that like for you to have, like you've had to like pay for out of pocket or struggle or take out a loan or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
Totally valid opinion, totally valid like experiences, and I understand that. It's not like a either or situation, right? It's the fact that like that's valid, but it's also valid that this is one of the most transformative like opportunities or programs that you can offer people who are incarcerated. And to top it off, it is privately funded. So it isn't like you have a beef about it being your tax dollars at the time. Now it has gotten federal and state funding to continue to do its work. But at the time, it was privately funded, and it was more of a thing. It was more of a like an ideological battle where it was like, you guys just don't deserve anything, right? Especially something as valuable as a decent education.
Right.
And to your point, damn, remind me your question.
It was like, are they fighting to cut?
Oh no, they're not. They've actually we've actually done a lot of work and expanded the funding for these programs, not just in New York but in other states through partnerships with other colleges to develop similar programs in facilities across the country. So we've actually been doing work to expand this opportunity not just in New York, but across the country. And even like they've gone so far as to like they have a partnership with this institution in Brazil. And I believe one other place that I can't recall right now. And so like it's expanding to doing international work, providing these opportunities for people incarcerated elsewhere. And so, you know, it's one of those things where like it was not cool to support this work or these programs, right? Or these opportunities 10, years ago or more. And over the last at least decade, the narrative has changed. People are people understand a bit more, or just like more tolerant of certain ideas, and are now supportive of it. Like nationally, support for college and prison programs is higher than people who don't support it. And so we've reached a time where like it is a good time to be doing this work. Because people are listening, right? People are actually listening and hearing and realizing that, like, if you want to address crime, if you want to address, homelessness, if you want to address unemployment, if you want to address a whole host of issues, people need opportunities to develop the tools to figure out their own problems, honestly, right? To like figure out how to do what they got to do for themselves. And, it doesn't always have to. That's something I really got from it. It was just like I've also feel empowered to like figure out my own problems, right? Like figure out solutions to my own problems, right? Because I have the tools to sort of again sit down, think through things, do research, figure out like different sort of paths I could take to get to either the same or different goals, and if. Everyone deserves the opportunity to develop those same tools, right? Like, so they don't have to be relying on anyone else but themselves.
Right. And what steps do you like plan on taking to reach that, to give that experience to everybody through the nonprofit program?
Well, I plan on starting simple, to be fair, but working to developing a rigorous curriculum. So that people are just like, oh yeah, I get it, but I want people to be writing papers about like political policy and or issues that they're having in the communities and how they plan on how to address it, and things like that. I want people to engage with the information that they're getting, apply it, struggle with it, because that's what I felt like really got it for me. And so I want to work toward getting to where I am like, it's like basically almost a college level class, right? And I'm there, you have like Abuela from 5A in the community center sitting here handing me a paper about how they ain't been picking up the garbage on the block like that, and she gonna call her assembly member and like bark at him because that's her right. You know what I mean? I want to. The ultimate goal is to get people to own the knowledge that they're receiving, right? To really take ownership of that education and like just do whatever it is that you feel empowered to do with it.
Right. So, in your opinion, you feel like that struggling part is crucial to understanding that you could use all the information you're given to in your day-to-day life?
I mean, how you get big muscles, right? You go heavier and heavier over time, right? And so like. It's the same thing for like, I feel like the brain. They always like the brain is your biggest muscle, right? Like it's very real. Like, not to say that everything has to be hard, but everything also doesn't have to be easy, right?
Right.
I've always been good at math. I'm not just numbers. Just my brain processes numbers very easily. I've never had to like really try. But something like literature and like writing was something I needed to learn, right? And like. I consider myself a really good writer now, but it's because I worked to get there, right? I remember like looking at one of the first papers I wrote, and I was like, "Yo, like who wrote this? Like y'all let me in?" You know what I mean? Like you can see the growth when you look back, and you're like, "All right, yeah, like it's being smart or intelligent isn't always about things being easy, right?
Right.
You can learn things. You can, become an expert in something that you just weren't good at initially, right? It's the same thing with like practicing your free throw shot. You probably suck in the beginning, but like you shoot enough of them, you're gonna be all right.
Yeah, I feel that.
The professors in your classes, how did they help you out? Did they give you any lifelong advice that you still stick to today?
Oh, man, I can't. My professors were a key part of like their entire academic experience because again, they came in to teach students, not incarcerated students, not people who have felonies or not people who have criminal records. They came to teach students, and they held you to that standard. And they were reasonable in terms of like I feel like prison, sometimes things come up, get in the way of you being able to like but like it had to make sense. They weren't soft on us. They held us to the same standards. They held the students on campus, and I feel like that was important because again, it allowed us to sort of see ourselves as students and adopt that identity in a very real way where we could believe they were students, which isn't something that like a lot of people were either familiar with or hadn't done in a long time. And they were, they cared about us getting it. They cared about our education, right? It was a thing where like they were as invested in it as we were. And like I have professors that are my friends now. Like I go to birthday parties, or sometimes they'll just reach out to me for opportunities. Like it's really just when I go back to community, the professors were a part of the community.
So like the professors weren't there just to be there. They were really into helping the people who were incarcerated, or students, I should say. Helping the students like really get their education.
Yeah, they were there to teach. Right. Professor, what do they get paid for? What did they study for, right? Be a teacher, be an educator, right? They were there to teach, right? And like they prepared their lesson plans, they came in with the material and we were there to learn. And sometimes people had to grow into their identities as students. Some people adopted it a little more easier than others. Some people were younger, some people older. It was like, it's very mixed. But at the end of the day, the experience really, of having a professor there who was there to teach and there to teach students. And like, if you in that class, then you're going to sit there and you're going to like, they're going to ask you questions. They're going to challenge you to speak, in front of the class, and answer a question that isn't necessarily always like, right or wrong, but more like, what do you think about this, right? What's your opinion?
Okay.
I have no more questions.
I just had a question that left my brain. I'm trying to think of it. I forgot. It left me.
Well.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
So, would you say that the college experience really helps the students like find themselves and find their identity?
I don't know if I would call it necessarily finding your identity, right? I think that the college experience, right? And again, I had a very particular college experience, right? Going to college out here is much different. I would have preferred it. Parties, right? A little bit more freedom. I have to deal with like all the other mess and drama. But the reality, I think at its core, right, it was college. And it's an experience that again, I don't want to say that it helped me find my identity, but it definitely helped me grow into myself, if that makes more sense, right? Like I feel like I've always kind of known who I was, but in the mix of all that, like I was navigating like, growing up in the hood and like, then being in prison and like, dealing with a dysfunctional family and like mental health issues and all these other things that, especially when you're a kid, like are like, might as well be, ancient Greek or something, right? It's just like, you don't know what's going on. You can't necessarily diagnose it or like understand it. And so, you know, like going to college and like having that experience, right, and growing and, you know, developing my ability to think for myself, especially, was very key for me, being able, again, to like work through the mess of like what's mine and what isn't mine. You know, what am I carrying for someone else? You know, what did I inherit from someone else? Do I really believe this, or is like this is just like, you know, what someone told me I should believe? You know, what like the hood said you need to be, right? Like it allowed me to sit back and interrogate myself about things that were affecting me day to day, or affecting how I felt, or affecting how I thought. And, you know, bit by bit, I guess I was able to chip away at the things that no longer served me. Because some things you do adopt, or you know, as coping mechanisms. Some things you adopt because you get, those are the tools you need, or the skills you need to survive in a given, you know, situation, environment, whatever. You know, but going to school definitely gives you the tools to sort of like, again, self-reflect in a very real way, and chip away at the things that no longer serve you, that you no longer need to be carrying around. And it isn't easy. It takes time. I'm still doing it.
Right.
But I didn't have the ability to do this prior to that.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Nah, that's about it.
Okay. I forgot the outro. Thank you for tuning in on the After School podcast. Today we had Giovanni Hernandez, who is
Byron, thank you for coming on the podcast today. Really appreciated the time. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No, man, thank you, man. It was great. I had so much fun. I thought I'd be a little more nervous, but like, nah, you guys have been chill. We're just out here vibing, and yeah, you guys had me thinking about things I hadn't thought about in a little while, or like, again, it happens to me all the time. Like, you know, you have these conversations with people you don't really know like that, or whatever, and like, they'll make you think about something you've never thought about, or like have a realization, like, oh, you asked a question earlier. I can't remember now. I'm gonna have to try to figure it out later.
Wait, me or him?
It was darn, because I remember thinking, I'd never thought about that. I'd never thought about that perspective, or I'd never thought about like, you know, how that may have impacted my experience, or you know, how I navigated something. So yeah, man, you know, it was fun. And you guys are great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us.